The Pacers started the game in a 13-0 hole. They had 13 points at the end of the first quarter. They trailed by as many as 20 points, and they were down 7 with 40 seconds to play. And yet somehow, even with Pascal Siakam only chipping in 10 points and having 5 fouls for the entire overtime as their most rock-solid performer throughout this entire season, they still managed to win that basketball game, pushing the Boulder up the hill to steal both Game 5 and the series. We're here to talk about it. Joining me, my favorite front-running freelancer, Samson Folk. Your thoughts on quite possibly, I think, maybe the wildest Pacer playoff game I've watched.
Pacers at the disco. I write wins, not tragedies. That game early on, it nearly broke my brain. Like anybody who read my piece on it, I was like short circuiting. And then I wrote that Aaron Nesmith reinvigorated my love for basketball, and we'll talk about how great he was in the series and in that game in particular. Wow. To see them not be able to drive the basketball at all, to not even get like below the break. And then the fact that Haliburton is going toe-to-toe at the end of regulation and then in overtime while missing 4 threes and Gary Trent Jr. hitting 4 threes. Like the game descended into madness. And the calm of the Haliburton drive is what parted the seas for these Pacers to make it onto round 2. Unbelievable. Truly an absurd game. But the Pacers win games.
It's almost like the 4-game road trip that they took where they were in double-digit holes in the first quarter of all 4 games and ultimately had to make a lineup change, along with their March Madness of late-game heroics, all combined to prepare them for this exact moment. Because in the first quarter, as you mentioned, only 58%, which even seemed high to me in retrospect, of their possessions had a paint touch. In the second half, including overtime, over 70%. Of their possessions had a paint touch. So I know it's going to be painful. But I feel like for the lore, to fully revel in what the mayhem later was, we need to look at some of what happened in that first quarter. I'm rolling the film.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
So, to point out, the very first possession of the game, they're running their motion swirl set against Milwaukee's man defense, which was very aggressive, pushing catches out towards half court. And yet still, multiple passes are made. Dribbling is happening. No dribbling is ever happening with even 1 foot in the paint until a shot clock violation on their opening set. On the very next possession, it was like an infinite time loop of handoffs, I felt, across above the break, just one after another. It was like breaking the 3-point line was against the rules. There was a whole nother possession after this one that you're going to see in a second, where they still, again, did not touch the paint for the entire possession until eventually, I think Jarris Walker ends up shooting like a 30-foot bomb. It reached such a point throughout while I was watching this, and I won't reveal what you texted me in the first half of this game or what I replied, but it reached a point where I tweeted at the time, I was like, it's Benedict Mathurin time, because I really just wanted to see somebody grit their teeth and finally push the ball downhill. And yet on his first possession that we just saw, a turnover, a live ball turnover where he didn't even take one dribble. Then at the other end of the court, it was not much better defensively. Like a loose ball where Brook Lopez can't dribble, they don't trap him. AJ Green's going to abort his dribble right here. They don't trap him. Nobody does. Brook Lopez, again, has the ball. Nobody traps him. And it's a dunk at the rim. Then they're against 2-3 zone. It ends up being a Obi Toppin self-created 2 at the end of the shot clock after Ben dribbles into a crowd and has to make a Hail Mary pass out to the outside. Like, just a lot of really, really ugly basketball was occurring. And I would have said, oh, this is quite possibly one of the most baffling plays I've seen. An offensive rebound goes to Gary Trent Jr. and they ran away from it. Just a lot of baffling stuff was happening. And then we reached the point here after Pascal basically wasn't involved in the offense, where I was almost getting to the point where I'm like, could they get away with Miles throwing the ball off the backboard with Pascal being fronted so that Pascal could just get it and do a quick putback. And then 2 seconds later, after that gimmicky thought, it was like, oh no. They clearly cannot get away from that because Miles can't even throw it over the top of Giannis. And that's what we were witnessing, Samson. That I want people to remember solely so that they can know what the turnaround was and how much better the overall word that you like, the gumption, became after halftime.
And like Pascal did not have his game, and you need some shot making in the flow to fit with the Pacers seamlessly. But I thought Pascal could have provided more on the glass in particular, but why they didn't go to him. I couldn't. The first time they gave him a post up, it was like the ball went to Aaron Nesmith on a double, and there wasn't a player within 16 feet of him for a wide open three. And it just, I was so shocked at the offensive process. It's like, again, I've covered Gary Trent Jr. I know he's a pest, but you can clear that guy's hips or you can post him up. AJ Green, we have a comment on the podcast as we said this guy might be trouble this series. Bucks fans were like, he's not good defensively. Like, that'll be a problem for us. And we also said AJ definitely hung in defensively, but not against Pascal's yet. Like, just handoffs above the break to nowhere. It, like, talking about it now, I feel like check my pulse. Like, dude, the start of that game, it almost broke my brain, man.
And the funny thing is that what happened at the end of the fourth quarter and overtime was that, like, magically, post touches for Siakam against AJ Green really did work.
Who'd have thunk it?
Miles is cutting. They're having to double. Things are happening.
Oh man, yeah. Can we leave the start of the game now?
Oh yes, we can. Okay. Can we look at Tyrese's latest loop of drives that led to?
Todd Whitehead had this stat, I believe. Crumpled Jumper on Twitter, one of the great stat people out there. He had Tyrese's right-left drive tendencies, and apparently Tyrese had 263 more drives to the right than he did to the left this season. Mm-hmm. The diversity of driving, that end one on AJ Green, we're seeing a guy step over weaknesses in real time, and he did not do it at the start of the game, but he certainly finished with it.
So the drives, as a callback for people who might remember when the Pacers played the Bucks last year, and Tyrese had a game winner coming off of this particular sideline out of bounds play where he caught it and rightfully read that Chris Middleton was pressing up on Siakam so that Beverly could duck under. So Tyrese rejected it, went to the cross, split, and then, through a pinhole, made that floater. The Pacers went to that exact same play again at the end of the fourth quarter. Only Kevin Porter Jr. went over the top, and then he just completely beat Giannis with Giannis pressing up. And as you said, all the way to the basket again. So that was a fun callback for me that they went back to that exact same sideline out of bounds play. Then it became like just getting Giannis in space, which wasn't working at the start of the game, but better here to get the foul call. Also, something that was very curious to me is that after they had put Giannis in space like that, they strangely put Gary Trent Jr. directly onto Pascal Siakam. On this possession, and I thought it was smart of the Pacers because they tried to let Giannis be a roamer off of Nembhard, and Nembhard stayed above the break, which that then becomes a much longer rotation for Giannis to be able to rotate to the rim, and you're going to see that he's going to step out to cleanse. And when he steps out to cleanse, then they go into attack mode, and Tyrese gets downhill, and he doesn't feel comfortable helping over, and that was the dunk that basically sent it to overtime, and then just another example of Tyrese being able to get past Giannis in the most crucial moment of the game. So quite a bit different. That's why I wanted to show the lore. That's why the lore was necessary, Samson, because I tweeted during the time that I felt watching that first quarter was like watching somebody in the shallow end of a pool thrash and thrash and thrash when you just want to look at them and be like, just stand up. That's literally all you need to do. Slowly but surely, they found a pool noodle, and then they started to swim, and then they kept swimming till the very end.
A credit to Tyrese, and also a credit to Pascal post touches at the end of the game. That, like, they didn't score on everyone, but they got great looks repeatedly. And the Pacers, they did not get everything to go their way in this game. This was a grind it out, punch it out game. TJ's shot making was massive in this game. They needed to be able to create offense, and they finally went to something that worked. And then Tyrese's driving tipped the scales, which it has. It has been a defining feature of this series. Impressive. Very good. And having a series winner in the your list of accolades, that's a fun thing to have. Good for Tyrese.
And very quietly, thankfully, because the Pacers did win this game, we don't have to revisit AJ Green inverted screen or corner because there was a lot of shenanigans happening again. We don't need to revisit it. But aside from those things, very quietly, Tyrese did a lot of little things defensively that made a difference in conjunction with Aaron Nesmith. And I do want to get into stuff about Aaron after this little section.
Mm-hmm.
But so defensively with Tyrese and with Aaron, Andrew, Nembhard, really bold move to be peel switching at the moment that he does right here, but his timing and feel is so good that he's able to step up there. And because that threw off Gary Trent's rhythm, Tyrese good at getting those rear view blocks. Bobby Portis pushes Pascal. That was one of Tyrese's bigger defensive plays. Tyrese getting some tap outs for contested rebounds. It felt like every time the Bucks got an offensive rebound, points happened out of it. Mm-hmm. And there was obviously an emphasis from the Pacers side because there was even missed rebounding opportunities on missed free throws that should never happen. Like the one where they purposely subbed in Thomas Bryant so that they wouldn't give up an offensive rebound, and they did anyways. But this in AJ Green inverted screen corner, after they had kind of botched those coverages a few times, they ended up putting Nesmith onto AJ Green so that they could just switch those actions. So Nesmith having to switch onto Giannis, and I thought that the entirety of this possession was pretty good because Giannis gets over there to the left block that he prefers. Nembhard comes to double from the top. Great rotation from Miles, but look how much ground Tyrese has to cover in order to get down to Bobby Portis in order to block that at the basket. These were not plays with this degree of urgency and Tyrese being in the right place at the right time and knowing in spots where he can cheat and recover like we talked about at the end of the series that you would have seen in the playoffs last year or in the regular season. There he helped from the weak side elbow, which was the change in coverage that we talked about, and just ripped it away from Giannis to get it loose.
Great
and then Aaron runs with him so that he can get that layup at the rim. More where you're going to see that Tyrese there gets the tap out so that Aaron can collect the rebound over Bobby Portis, and then Aaron's leading the break going the other way. Aaron with the hustle to actually follow for the putback on that Tyrese drive. And then I thought it was very telling, too, that, which we'll get into when we look at the last 40 seconds of the game, but, Pascal had 5 fouls at the end of regulation and for the entirety of overtime. Nesmith, by the end of overtime, had 5 fouls. So Miles Turner was guarding Giannis at the end of regulation and for the majority of the overtime period because they didn't have a lot of other options until eventually they tried Jarris. But Miles here in this critical moment when the score is tied, he goes to the block, and Giannis actually did turn baseline for the shot that he likes, but Aaron was able to push that catch and that turn a little bit further out. So I thought that there was, in addition to what we're going to talk about offensively with Aaron and what we just showed driving-wise with Tyrese, there was very little moments from both of them on defense that made a big difference in the game late as well, especially by comparison to what we're seeing early when people can't drop AJ Green when he's stuck in mud 40 feet from the basket and we're running away from Gary Trent Jr. with a wide open 3.
Yeah. I mean, the Bucks on this series basically got 7 made threes a game on 50% shooting from the two of Green and Gary Trent Jr. They were getting unbelievable shooting. You pack the paint against Giannis, you want to cut off those drives, you got to give something. And those guys in particular, I mean, Portis had a game here or there, as he always does against the Pacers. But, I mean, the shooting, the Pacers had to contend with some stuff, and those extra hustle plays to get after it, they helped a bunch. Nesmith offense, is that where we're going?
Nesmith, I feel like probably on my end, I didn't do a good enough job throughout this series highlighting that he was a very solid contributor for them and really kind of a perfect 5th starter. It would probably be harder to design a perfect 5th starter for how the Pacers play than the way that Aaron just played in that series.
And that's why I'm here, because Caitlin often forgets to highlight these things.
56% on 2s, 51% on 3s, 6 of 8 on layups.
Yeah. And not easy layups. Like this is what I wrote in my piece last night, is that like there were a couple times like Nembhard took it baseline. The defense completely bungled the rotations. Tyrese got middle a couple times where there was bungled rotations. But when Nesmith got middle, it was against a compact defense. And he still was the one who attempted to take it into the teeth. And he still made shots. And it was like, you know, the guy who like claps his hands, he's like, come on, guys, like, let's get into like that. Not when it's easy, but when it's hard. And that was all of his jump shots in this game too. Just like he was incredible. He was, and what do you have? 12 boards too. Oh my, Nesmith had a whale of a game. When I wrote that, he reinvigorated my love for basketball. Like he really brought it back. He was so good. Hell yeah, Aaron.
And there's things that he's doing that the Pacers were missing and that have quite frankly been missing from his game up until this point, because around the trade deadline, people know I do not write fake trade pieces. That's an embargo at Basketball She Wrote. But people did talk about needs, and one of the things that I talked about with the 15th roster spot and throughout the year is that they really don't have a lot of movement shooting on the roster. They rank 27th in movement threes when the shooter's moving to the right, left, or in relocation per 100 possessions. Nesmith currently has an effective field goal percentage of 65.7% on movement threes, and he's doing it on team high 2.78 per 100 volume. And they're running sideline out of bounds plays for Aaron to move to the corner. More often than not, they don't actually get the shot out of this play. But not only did they get the shot, but he made that. That's a very tough shot for Aaron to hit. In fact, whenever you and I talked about the Jenny 4 verticals end of game set, I remember talking to you and being like, you know, kind of interesting that they had Aaron be the person that was moving there, which in retrospect, I understand, because they were using Doug McDermott somewhat as a decoy because they trusted him as the ghost screener to draw attention there. But like, point being is this isn't a set that you would often see Aaron making that shot out of. In fact, he's made 7 threes out of slobs all season, and none of them were out of that play. And the reason why that stood out to me is because they went to that exact play again, knowing that he had made the shot in the fourth quarter as effectively a decoy, where you can see Bobby Portis's attention is clearly on Aaron going to that corner. And in reality, the play was for Tyrese and Miles up top, knowing that Tyrese was being topsided by Kevin Porter Jr. there. We talked about him being more physical as a screener. He effectively pins his own guy into Bobby Portis, and Bobby Portis then pushes over Tyrese, and that ends up being a foul. Aaron's movement set that up. And then to see him being used, like we talked to how much about the Bucks using shallow cuts and the chaos that it caused for the Pacers. Then to use Aaron in that same manner and for him to get up to the top of the key, that's a contested shot. Like Gary probably could have had his hand up sooner, but still tough. And then the one that I tweeted about during the game that really impressed me, I don't even know if I've seen the Pacers run this veer action for Aaron, let alone for him to easily glide into a 2-point shot. Because last year in the playoffs, Aaron did not shoot the 3 well. And part of the reason why is because he really struggled to adapt to the higher rate of flyby closeouts, especially when he needed to reload and recapture his rhythm for a 1-dribble-3. And I was kind of like, hey, maybe if he can get downhill into 2-point range more, that might help him at least as a counter for that type of coverage. So to be seeing him do that in a closeout game, and then as you mentioned, then they're just skipping it over the top to Aaron when Tyrese was seeing exaggerated coverages. Sometimes when Aaron's driving, he looks like a speed skater who doesn't have skates on. Like, he really has had to come around to mastering balance because of those things. But point being is, we're in a closeout game. He scores at all 3 levels. I don't know that I would have predicted that heading into this, despite the fact that, like, I'm probably higher on Aaron than most, but like, I didn't see this performance coming.
Imagine being a Bucks fan and seeing Aaron Nesmith grab 12 rebounds, but also seeing him hit 3-point shots and jumpers out of like the Bryn Forbes package. And you're like, well, what the hell? You know, Bryn Forbes is in the league to do one thing, and he does it well, nothing else. And Aaron Nesmith puts on the cap for one game or for a series. You're just like, wow, this guy catches grenades sprinting into the corner and hits those threes. He comes off the veer and he like hits the pull up. And yeah, when he drives, I clench my teeth. Like, I like that. Well done, Aaron.
Then the last thing that I want to talk about as we looked at this game, because quite frankly, Samson is the person who wanted us to talk about this game.
And I will say, the text you said you wouldn't mention is probably after the first quarter. I texted Caitlin. I said, I changed my mind. I don't want to talk about this game.
I wasn't looking forward to picking that apart from like the losing side of things. I really was not. easy to look back at it now and be like, some of this was kind of humorous. Not so fun when you're like, well, how'd they fix on this? Of course, the easy fix would have been just like, play better. So the last 40 seconds is the last thing that I wanted to talk about specifically from this game. Just to get your reaction to, at what point were you like, what is the most absurd part of the last 40 seconds for you, Samson? The fact that Andrew Nembhard easily dribbles into a 30-foot bomb and just drains it?
I've come to expect these things.
Yeah. Or the fact that, like, I don't know.
The backcourt rotation.
Gary Trent Jr., though, you're catching this on a curve. The Bucks are up 4. Why didn't he just push the ball downhill? Why did he continue to curl into the catch? Curl into the catch.
Can I say something? Like, I actually have a beef. You probably saw it watching every single, and it's something that has been happening in the NBA slowly. Why there is no more, like, the jump stop is you create the point of contact at once. That's what makes it legal. But watching Gary Trent Jr. 6 times in this series take 2 full steps and not go up with the ball, a travel, and just hang under the rim. Why? Why is this not called in the NBA? It bothered me so much. Like, he's doing the steps for a layup and then just not going up. That's travel. I saw him do it 6 times. And you know why Gary does this? Because I watched him miss every transition layup as a Raptor, and he's like, how do I get around this? Anyway, Gary can't dribble that well, so he's scared of this.
He was afraid to curl into the catch, I suppose. So The Pacers trap him, and Andrew Nembhard came off of Kevin Porter Jr. in the backcourt to anticipate this and get this pass. And also, shout out to Kevin Porter Jr. that your guy runs off of you in the backcourt, and you just continue to stand there doing absolutely nothing while Nembhard snatches that pass.
Like, they thought they had the game, man. They really did.
I mean, that possession is totally playing not to lose. That was 100% playing not to lose, not playing to win. That was kind of a recurring theme for the Bucks late in this game. And then that they don't foul Tyrese here. They do not foul Tyrese at the logo. But they do foul him when he gets all the way to the rim. Like, I'm sorry, but like, and I trimmed some of this for, to make this more compact when reviewing it. But also, the Pacers pressuring inbounds passes made Doc have to burn the rest of his timeout, so that when they do get to the rest of this game, and then I want to point out too that I said that Miles was guarding Giannis at the end of regulation. Jarris came in for Siakam on these last 2 possessions, including that one when Nembhard snatched the pass when the Bucks were up 4. Jarris comes in and is guarding Giannis here. And I wanted to point this out, to which people were like, well, he only came in because Pascal had 5 fouls and because Aaron had 5 fouls in that moment and they needed to foul. Well, yes, those are very obvious factors of the game. Like, kudos to you for that. But they literally could have put anyone. If that was the case, if this was just like foul bait, and just somebody go in and foul Giannis because we want to send him to the line as the worst free throw shooter, they could have put Quentin Jackson in. They could have put Ben Shepherd in. Could have put literally anybody in. This is still a moment of trust and a high leverage situation that Jarris is the person that they called on to be put in this situation, especially because they could have just kept going with Miles Turner. Miles Turner guarded Giannis for the entire overtime up until these last 2 spots, and they let Jarris do it. So given some of the things that we talked about, I don't think that Jarris always held his own particularly against Giannis throughout this series. But in terms of him helping with, Siakam's foul trouble, helping with Siakam's stamina and taking certain possessions, and for him to have this and be in a game in a closing situation, I don't think is insignificant.
Mm-hmm. And also on top of that, the reason why the Bucks didn't have the timeout after Tyrese made the game-winning layup was because they had to burn it on their own baseline. And Jarris was part of the pressure on that play as well. So just credit to Jarris, because Jarris, he didn't hit the threes last game, but he was doing the finesse stuff. But a lot of hanging in on a team that has so much of their rotation figured out is mastering the little things, giving that little oomph and the extra stuff. So yeah, credit to Jarris.
What did you think about him coming off to peeling off of Giannis to trap AJ Green?
I mean,
and in fact, like, terrible by Gary Trent for the ball to go out between his legs, but also because Jarris came over there with his lengthy wingspan, the pass was a little bit lower than you probably would have had if AJ Green was just making the pass.
Yeah, I think honestly, I probably, if I get to go back, I probably would be like, I don't know about the double. Like, he has to be there earlier on the double, but like, Gary having that go out of bounds is inexplicable. There's just that, like, this is why the Pacers don't worry. When you have the mandate of heaven, you know things are going to work out. You know what I mean? Down 40 seconds left. What, somebody tweeted the stat, there's been like, what, 1,096 games or like 1,996 games in the NBA playoffs where that was the case. And the Pacers were the first team to win the game under these circumstances. Then again, we saw Obi's corner triple earlier. We saw Tyrese's 4-point play. Like, this team has the mandate of heaven. So why would you shirk away from anything? You just like, oh, we're going to win this. Something will happen. Just walk the path. And
the funny thing is I was conditioned to all of this. Like, the terrible start really didn't set me off, because I'm like, I've seen this enough. Like, I've seen them do this so many times in the first quarter that I was fairly confident that they would chip into the lead. And even when it was late, I honestly wasn't sure that they were going to lose. I was starting to contemplate, like, we're going to have to get on and talk about this. Like, I really was thinking about that, but I was like, maybe not. Like, I still thought they were alive. I really did, because so many crazy things have happened with this basketball team this year.
They are the number one team at snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Incredible ability to do so this season.
Well, I guess I didn't let people know, which I should have said when we talked about Aaron Nesmith. The other half of this podcast is intended to be an abbreviated version of my monthly mailbag, because it is very hard to fit in the full mailbag in the middle of a playoff run when we're covering nightly games and there's another series coming up. But I also didn't want to completely ignore that, because I do value that people, number one, support my work and subscribe to my work, and that they take an interest in the things that we talk about and actually want to hear our answers for that. So, with respect to what we said about Aaron, I wanted to say that Craig Lindemann actually did say that and said Nesmith just finished a huge series compared to last year. Is this just make or miss league variance thing, or is there something in this game or the matchup that has made a difference this year? There's some variance. Like, obviously he made some movement threes where that hasn't necessarily been a component of his game up until this point, but I would say more so than the series, that matchup is it's just Aaron continuing to add to his game in ways that we hadn't seen in the past. He's simplified his reads against closeouts in a better way than what was happening certainly in his first season with the Pacers, and that's continued to develop and grow from there. He's added strength to his body, so some of those balance issues that we're seeing because of how much of kind of a wild driver he can be when he gets to the rim, that allows him to maintain balance better and actually be able to finish. So there's some stuff like that where I really just give the credit to Aaron.
Yeah, it's a credit to Aaron, but also it is like the matchups do dictate that, like, there's room for Aaron. The Cavs, and we'll talk about this much longer, but this, like, Cavs could really be a Nembhard series on both sides of the floor. Like, that could really be something massive. And he didn't have as much opportunity in this series because Dame wasn't at full capacity. Like, there's a version of events where Nembhard on Dame is, if not the thing we talk about most in this series, is number 2. But it shook out in a way that Nesmith has, like, a matchup that he is bigger than a lot of guys who guard him. He's guarding up against you. Like, he's just in a position where he gets to play fantastic, and he did. Credit.
The memory of this game will most likely remember Tyrese's dunks and Tyrese's drives. I hope people will remember that long shot that Andrew made and that steal that he came clear across from the backcourt from. And I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit more in the mailbag, perhaps.
2 30-foot bombs in the game from Nembhard. He had the step back, too, to go up 52-51 as the Pacers were inevitably chipping back into the game because Caitlin knows all. But I will say, there's one person who predicted this win.
That's true. That's true.
Right here.
That's accurate. We'll see how accurate you are in the next series against the Cavs.
Tougher.
Okay, so on to the mailbag. I will now become Caitlin Courier. A question that I didn't think, or a player I didn't think about that much, I guess I should say, throughout this series. Question from Sam Osborne. Hello. I know he might not have factored much into this playoff series since he didn't play a ton last year, but I was wondering what difference Isaiah Jackson might make in this playoff run versus Thomas Bryant. Obviously, it's impossible to know what strides he may have made this season with his game, but generally, what kind of impact do you think he would have had?
This was the player who, when I read your piece, Ijax was involved. I mean, This is such a difficult, and I haven't sat. I am part of the biggest basketball podcast in Toronto and the biggest basketball podcast in Indiana. I have not sat with the Isaiah Jackson question too much, but I mean, there's like a natural like Jericho Sims matchup there a little bit, I guess. But Thomas, we said we wouldn't think about him very much. And he factored in a little bit more. And I actually I will give credit to Thomas. He was better in this series than I thought he would be.
Mm-hmm.
Credit to Thomas. But I mean, I like Isaiah Jackson. I am big Isaiah Jackson guy. I love all of the end of bench Pacers bigs. I fell to my knees when James Wiseman became a Raptor, but then was released shortly after. I said, no.
I made a very sad version of a power ranking where I had to power rank Tony Bradley, Moses Brown, Jahlil Okafor. I almost said Emeka Okafor. Jahlil Okafor, like they were digging deep to find a third big this season.
Yeah.
Samson Enrique Freeman was running around. Like lots of guys were doing things. So my thoughts on Isaiah Jackson is not to make people
film. Let's go.
Yeah, my thoughts on Isaiah Jackson. I take these mailbag questions very seriously, Samson. This was the last game that Isaiah Jackson played in. And this might be meaningful for you because Brandon Ingram is involved. So the New Orleans Pelicans, when they're fully healthy, are a very difficult matchup for the Indiana Pacers over the last 2 seasons between how they match up with Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and then at times when it's been Jonas Valanciunas, between how they're going to toggle whether do you want Siakam chasing over against Brandon Ingram? Do you want Brandon Ingram shooting over the top of Aaron Nesmith? Are you going to chance putting Aaron Nesmith on Jonas Valanciunas, and that might be a post-up and you need to double? Most often they put Miles on Zion and then toggle between Siakam and Aaron. So in this case, Siakam's trying to chase over. It's an empty side pick and roll. Miles is up super high. Ben's way late rotating and isn't going to do anything against Zion anyways. And I remember watching this game in live action and thinking if only they could just switch it. Like what we just witnessed in this round against Giannis, where they were consistently switching on the 4-5 pick and rolls. Okay, so unfortunately for me, the clip from that game, which maybe it is fortunate for all of us, because it is actually the clip where Isaiah ended up tearing his Achilles, which is sad to watch and replay, is it's that exact same coverage again. And while they didn't feel comfortable switching Miles onto Brandon Ingram in space, which Brandon is a different matchup than Giannis, clearly, they did feel comfortable switching Isaiah Jackson onto Brandon Ingram in space. And that's what they did. And I was like, oh, this might give them some flexibility defensively this year to do some coverages between Pascal and Isaiah that they couldn't otherwise do. And then obviously he's walking off the court and, worse fears end up being confirmed later on. So that was one thing. And in this series, with how much they did switch 4-5, I think by comparison to Thomas Bryant, you feel better about Isaiah Jackson switching out against more different types of matchups than you do Thomas in space. And then another thing that I would point out is that Isaiah is very good in blitz coverage. He's very rapid, and then he can use his offhand and actually force negative dribbles where you're getting those high hang time passes that allows his teammates to recover and get into passing lanes. So I feel like if Dame had played, or potentially in the next series against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, if they wanted to just occasionally mix in some blitz, that's something that Isaiah would have given you that I don't think you're going to be able to feasibly get to with Miles and Thomas in the same way. And then one last thing that I would point out, and I know that you were higher on James Wiseman than I was, and unfortunately for him, he ruptured his Achilles as well. But something that stood out to me in preseason when I was watching James, because at the time Isaiah was out dealing with other injuries, is something that Thomas and Miles give you that Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman would not, is I talk very often about how much the Pacers like inverted spacing. And they like putting guards in the dunker spot. And here they tried to reverse it. And they literally told James Wiseman to go stand in the corner. And the Atlanta Hawks were like, oh, okay, we don't care. And they still kept Clint Capella in the dunker spot next to Aaron anyways, which meant that Andrew couldn't get the rest of the way to the basket. And then just some positioning stuff with James Wiseman that can be somewhat similar with Isaiah, where Andrew's literally having to tell him to clear out. And even when he does clear out, his defender just doesn't go to the other side and loads up on Pascal. Like those types of things, when you can actually, regardless of how closely Thomas gets guarded, which isn't as close as how Miles gets guarded, there is value in being able to credibly position somebody, especially in the strong side corner as a big, and they can occasionally knock in shots. That's not something that they would have gotten from James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson. And that in part was why the longer Jalen Smith was with the Pacers, I would have probably preferred Jalen to Isaiah. Isaiah's the better defender, but in terms of getting to the different alignments that they want to get to, Jalen lets them do that. Now, Jalen did not play as well as Isaiah Jackson in the Knicks series. He didn't even play in the Knicks series. He ended up being out, but that was in part because he had an injury late, and they last season during exits, they basically revealed that he wasn't. He never fully recovered from that, and then obviously they have organizational stuff invested in Isaiah because they drafted him. I still like Isaiah Jackson, and I think he would have solidly been the backup behind Miles over James Wiseman if everybody had stayed healthy. But that's kind of where I see it. I think you would have gotten more blitzing. I think you would have been more comfortable switching Isaiah onto Giannis, and maybe in a game where Pascal and Nesmith are both battling foul trouble like they were, maybe there's moments where you're seeing Isaiah out there guarding Giannis instead of some of the other people that they tried. I think that's entirely possible, but there would have been a give and take with the spacing, I think.
Yeah. We missed out on the James Wiseman 18 and 13 per 36 numbers and minus 11 on-offs. We missed out on that season.
I'm not going to slander so much of James Wiseman, but I will say I was lower on him than what other people were when they were watching.
Our second disagreement, we have short roll versus roll, and we have James
he's
Wiseman.
so fluid when he gets up and down the court, but he can only do it for like 2 or 3 possessions in a row, which is a tough thing to do when you're a Pacer team that wants to play as fast as they do. But on to other questions. This is a fun one. Who on this Pacers team would you say most fits the definition of quote-unquote playoff riser, and why? This is from Jeff Hasser. Anyone from other teams, Raptors, or historically that you also think fit this definition, besides maybe the obvious all-NBA names?
It's one guy, and it's so easy. It's Andrew Nembhard. Mm-hmm. And I think this will increase as Nembhard's handle gets better. But there is an extra level of physicality in the playoffs that I'm wondering about the Raptors quote unquote lead guard right now, Emmanuel Quickley. I've seen him in a playoff series, and that physicality can take away a lot of stuff that he likes. The physicality grants Andrew Nembhard new avenues rather than taking things away. The playoffs fits his game so much better than just like the hum-ho of the regular season. And to be a playoff riser, you have to be a little bit underwhelming in the regular season. And Nembhard is just so easy an answer. The fact that you guys got Nembhard on the contract that he's on is like.
Did you know that there was? I'm not going to name who, but there was multiple cap experts last year that referred to that as a bad contract before he had even played.
Well, I'm glad they're experts on the cap. Hopefully, not basketball. I don't know. Andrew Nembhard is good. And in like the 16 game versus 82 game, yeah, like in a free flowing 82 game, maybe Kevin Huerter pops more than Andrew Nembhard does. But when it's winning time, baby, give it to Andrew.
You could really tell when people were doubling down on these summer takes too, because when Andrew was out briefly with the knee stuff, they're like, Benedict Mathurin's just going to take his spot for good now. I was like, no, like I was very adamant. People can know if they listen to the preview pod that I did with Nate Duncan, we talked about this. And I was like, if Benedict Mathurin becomes a starter, it will be in place of Aaron Nesmith. It will not be in place of Andrew Nembhard if he holds there, and he'll have to earn it in order to get it, which for a time they were playing well with Ben in the starting lineup. That was a sound lineup for them until they ended up going on that West Coast trip and felt like they needed to make a tweak, and just felt that naturally, for the reasons that we talked about, that Aaron fits as a fifth starter and Ben fits taking usage off the bench. That's just what makes sense for the team. But in terms of like toggling between Ben and Andrew, there's not been question for me for 2 years that Andrew strongly complements Tyrese Haliburton in a lot of ways, especially in a playoff environment.
I think Andrew could complement like a vast array of teams. He's incredibly strong at what he does. And I know the numbers aren't just like, especially during the regular season, it's not a home run, but yeah, he's a playoff riser. No doubt.
Definitely a riser, given that he shot 29% from three during the regular season, 30% on catch and shoot threes, 27% on pull-ups, and in this first round series, 50% on 2 catch and shoot threes per game, 44% on 2.3 pull-up threes per game, which that volume alone, by comparison to what he's normally done, he doesn't even take that many pull-up threes. Shooting 26.6% above his expected effective field goal percentage. These aren't even easy shots that he's made so far. But as far as other playoff risers, I thought it would be fun to call back if you remember this, since they did mention the Raptors. The entire 2016-17 Raptors-Pacers playoff series was like one giant playoff riser. Do you remember this at all?
This series, of course.
Arguably Paul George's best playoff series with the Indiana Pacers was when they played the Raptors in 2016-17.
So I am when I was doing minute basketball, or my new basketball, however somebody wants to say it, and bouncing around, I would take all the time in the world to preach the gospel of Paul George, because Paul George is awesome. And Paul George is a foundational player in how I view basketball and how I love basketball. And when he was on those Pacers, oh my God, just incredible. So, he was so good that I like openly resented everybody who did like the playoff P, like all of this stuff. Like, oh, he doesn't do this. Like, no, he was like by definition one of the greatest like playoff performers of his era for a time. Whew.
It's frustrating in retrospect because when Paul George went to Oklahoma City, and rightfully so, his athleticism was never quite the same after the leg injury, but his handle continued to improve after he was traded to OKC. This was a guy who could barely split a screen and then went to like making U-turns into snake dribbles. That much was accurate, but it got pointed out that like, well, he's not done anything on a playoff team unless he's on like this perfect core with David West and Roy Hibbert and George Hill and Lance. I'm like, no, his best playoff series was when most of those guys were no longer even on the team. He was godlike in that series against the Raptors, 27-7 on 45, 41, 95 splits. Absolutely. Like, I don't know. Were you levitating during this series? Because Paul George was putting the clamps on DeMar DeRozan, your other favorite player. Like, I remember that. That was like watching a bird fly into the same glass window over and over and over again.
Earlier that season, I believe DeMar had like a 38 or 40 point game on Paul George during the regular season, if I remember correctly. But then once it was playoff time, the fun was over.
And the funny thing is like I wasn't even going to pick Paul George necessarily as the playoff riser, although he was consistently a playoff riser with his rebounding. He's one of those wings, like kind of what Andrew Wiggins did, who can really up that when the playoffs come. But because I know we're going to get hate in the comments for being like, but look at what Paul George did in this series or that series. Like, that isn't who I was going to pick. Bismack Biyombo got paid in this series. Solomon Hill got paid after this series.
Solomon,
he got paid after this series. Like, this series was a big playoff riser for a lot of people. And it's hilarious because if you go back and look at the roster, like, look at the Pacers roster. They were playing lineups, like honest to God lineups with Ty Lawson, Jordan Hill, and Rodney Stuckey, Lavoy Allen, Raheem Christmas. Well, Raheem wasn't playing, but there was like 6 players on this team who were no longer in the NBA within 2 years. And that's what Paul George was out there carrying a series too. Like,
well, Paul also, it's not even just that series. The series he had as a Clipper after Kawhi went down when he beat Utah, that Utah team was really good. Like a really, really strong team. And Paul just controlled pace. It was similar to what he did with Indiana. It's just like control pace, account for the lack of talent everywhere else by just hitting pull-up jumpers and just being an incredible defender. Yeah.
Could you watch like an Evan made clip video of just Paul George
I watched
slithering
them
over
all.
screens? I would watch a long video of that.
Superb slitherer, Paul George.
A real lineup, just to like check myself, a real lineup really was Rodney Stuckey, Ty Lawson, CJ Miles, Solo, and Jan Mahinmi. That was a playoff lineup. I just want people to know that. And I think CJ shot like 27% from 3 in that series. Like, CJ is one of my favorite role players in Pacers history, but the shooting was not kind to him in that particular series. But
he's also beloved with Raptors fans too. CJ is one of those like everywhere he went, people are like, we love that guy.
CJ and Thad, 1 and 2 right there.
I
don't know. Raptors fans might not like Thad so much right now since he doesn't like Canada.
Also because Thad had the dust up with Scotty, which you do. If you want to be in good with the Raptors fans, you as a player need to say Scotty is God King, like consistently.
Noted. And do not make memes that involve Brandon Ingram and Pascal. Don't do it.
Don't.
You'll be cast out forever. Next question, Isaiah. There have been a lot of references recently to quote-unquote micro skills that Tyrese has added to his game over the past year. For example, handling being weak by being able to hit the step back three going left, learning how to push physical defenders into screens, etc. I like it when you talk about those because it's more concrete than the overarching skills we often talk about, like playmaking, shooting, finishing, rebounding, etc. What are some other micro skills that you've noticed Pacer players adding to their games that you haven't talked about much? Alternatively, what are some specific micro skills that you'd like to see certain Pacer players add besides, Jarris not living on his tiptoes? Haha.
My favorite one is the Isaiah Thomas really did it, like the hang dribble pull. Darius Garland is perhaps the best at it, is the no dribble snatchback. It's like the hezzy hang dribble. You burst forward, you plant your right foot, and then you pull everything back into a pull. Tyrese does it sometimes. I think he could do it more convincingly, and I think that could actually be like a bigger part of his game. I would love that as like a big part of his game, although it's still present. What else do I want to see? I mean, Andrew, the D-cell is like an incredible aspect of like micro skills. Is if anybody's seen the videos of me doing weighted pistol squats, and if you've seen me play basketball at a much lower level, because despite what Caitlin's family thinks I'm not an NBA player, the D-cell that Nembhard does is so reliant on leg strength and balance and a little bit of ankle flexion to stabilize. Like those are all micro skills that inform that, and his comfortability with physicality. Those are my two, I guess, an existing micro skill and then one that I'd like to see more of. But what are you looking for in micro skills?
I think you picked the snatchback because you like the snatchback.
Snatchbacks are great. I love snatchbacks. The dribble snatchback is more fun, but like I hated watching Isaiah Thomas because I felt like, who was it? Was it Hoiberg who was like, he's carrying the ball? I've had enough of this. I felt the same way, but Darius Garland has a cleaner version of it. And I think Darius is probably, actually both Donovan and Darius do that move a lot. And I think Tyrese could really unleash hell from downtown with that.
Well, as you all know, my favorite micro skill that somebody added specifically this year, I really truthfully do believe that Nembhard has outlier feel as a defender, and the thing that I think that he does that has the most outlier feel is his ability to pull the chair on drives.
Yeah.
In fact, so much, which I can't fully reveal, but the first time that I saw him do this against Jaylen Brown, I wrote, it was just like a one-off line. I was writing about Tyrese playing against the Celtics, and I was like, oh, there are some other contributions, like Nembhard pulled the chair on the drive. Somebody who shall remain nameless who works in basketball read that and contacted me and did not believe that's what he really did. They didn't think that they thought it was incidental. They did some checking through back channels, and that's something that Nembhard actually worked on. How exactly you go about working on this would be a fantastic podcast conversation that I hope somebody doesn't steal and get him sitting on a camera to do from my ideas of things that I've written about. But this is a real thing, and I do want to show the film on it because I think I've cataloged every time he's done it this year. And I was very certain that it was intentional, and as it turns out, it is. For him to be able, like, it's one thing to pull the chair when you're doing this against a static post-up. And the first time I saw any NBA player do this, ironically, you and I were covering a Raptors Pacer game, and I thought I had watched OG Anunoby do this against Benedict Mathurin, because Benedict Mathurin likes that bump before he gets to the rim. I'm like, ooh, he just threw off his rhythm a little bit. I've not seen anybody else do this. To do this against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the point that he falls down, given how he's basically a human slinky when he plays. In a critical moment of a Kings game, he pulls the chair against Zach LaVine to the point where Zach LaVine airballs a layup. Does it against Shaedon Sharpe's athleticism till the point that he almost falls down. Does it against Devin Booker's physicality under the basket. Does it against Kobe White until he almost falls down. Does it against Trae Young's hostage dribble when he's trying to foul bait going backwards until Trae Young falls down. Jordan Poole twice during crunch, and then the very first one I ever noticed in semi-transition when he pulled it against Jaylen Brown. So a lot of people are going to see that and think it was Olay defense. It is not. That is something that he's intentionally doing, and that's a great counter for everybody. Talks about people using their off arm a lot and that people want that officiated more. For Andrew to go into a summer and be like, and predict the exact moment when that's going to happen, really good stuff.
It's funny you brought that up because that is the mirror of the D-cell, because the D-cell part of like he's so good at that bump and getting clearance because I don't know if he has like the spidey sense, like his hairs stand on end when he knows somebody's about to tilt their momentum, but he has maybe one of the best I've ever seen at reading that, whether it's someone defending him or if he's defending somebody, is when somebody's about to shift momentum into contact. But the inverse, because when he's giving that bump to clear space, he's noticing when the person is about like, okay, they're about to load up and then they're trying to move with me. It's like, okay, then I will let you move past me and you're gone. And then the other way, it's like they're about to load up into me. And now that resistance you were waiting for has evaporated. And you're like, oh my God, you fall over. Shea goes, the octopus driver, like maybe the best driver of all time. He'd made you fall. And Shea, the way his body works is that he actually can't fall because his ankle will simply absorb his Nembhard. This is a very pro Nembhard podcast overall, but this episode in particular is like just gushing. But he's special.
I just want to point out, if you watched all those clips and thought, wow, that's a neat thing that he does, and I like, nerdy basketball podcasts and nerdy basketball websites. A t-shirt design that my sister made that you can see me wearing in numerous pictures on Twitter. It is a tilted chair because Nembhard pulls the chair. I don't see other NBA players doing this. Nobody said it would be Nem easy. Get yours today. Did I use this opportunity of a mailbag question as a shameless plug? Yes, in part. But I also think it's important to highlight the things that Nembhard does. I mean, because he can apply like 800 pounds of pressure, and then he can also release in those situations on that. And like, it goes beyond that too, because I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about the Cavs, but what he does as an off-ball defender, like coming clear from the backcourt, is also something that's very complementary to the fact that he's also the team's best on-ball defender. I think he's been there. I mean, it doesn't show necessarily in the on-off swings because things that Pascal does in the shadows are so valuable to their overall pick and roll coverage. But I think that Nembhard's been the best defender on this team for 2 seasons now, and he's only gotten better this year.
By some measure. I know Pascal has like big impact numbers and stuff like that, and well done to him, but Nembhard he's the guy. It's also why you and I are so high on him. It's like as much as he might average 10 points and that underwhelms people, whatever. Who cares?
The last mailbag question is in reference to me, but also something that you've said on the podcast numerous times. Victor, Caitlin, have you ever been offered or considering becoming an NBA or WNBA coach? You clearly have the basketball chops for it. Obviously, we would hate to lose you as a content creator, but I can't imagine any team in the NBA or WNBA wouldn't benefit from you being on their coaching staff. Have you ever been offered or considered it? Second part of the question, I often hear you guys say that you're not an NBA coach and therefore don't have as much knowledge about basketball as the NBA coaches. But I have a lot of trouble believing that you're not being either disingenuous or simply not giving yourselves enough credit. Do you really believe that an NBA coach has that much more basketball knowledge than you? If so, what do you think that they have that you don't when it comes to basketball chops? If you want to answer the second part of that, go ahead.
So the second part is that I just think that I watch games from like the bird's eye view, or like when I'm at the arena, it's easier to, and especially camera angles, everything like that. And I'm writing this piece that comes out at the end of the game, diagnosing things, but I'll notice it after I think Caitlin notices it much earlier than I do, but like 3 or 4 plays of something happening, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see something take form. Coaches see it immediately and they are so immersed in it. Like sometimes it does seem like the difference between coaches and talking heads is vernacular. And that's, I think, how a lot of people read it. And I think a lot of people think coaching is by and large like getting the right rotations or the soft skills of coordinating a bunch of men who believe they're the best in the world into a hierarchy that makes sense, which is all important. But coaches really are immersed so deeply in the game of basketball that they notice things that just never gets talked about. Like, it is our job, especially mine and Caitlin's, in the roles we fill in each media sphere, is to dive a little bit deeper. And the result of that is we introduce topics and themes that are new. And so it seems like we have this unknown ability to analyze the game. But the truth is that there just isn't any want from coaches to express that stuff. So we're filling that void. That does not, at least in my my side of things. That does not qualify me as a coach. And I get this type of stuff from Raptors fans all the time. I do, however, knowing everything I just said, I do think Caitlin could coach at a professional level. That's me personally. It's not glib or trite. This is earnest. Okay?
A lot of
That's how I
triteness going
feel.
on. I think my answer to the second part of that question would be similar to Samson's in that number one is there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes and behind the curtain. A lot of what coaching is not even necessarily in-game management. It's human management, which requires you to wear a lot of different hats. And I witnessed this at times, not at the professional level, but just being a kid and being around my dad at practices, at open gyms, traveling from point A to point B and getting buy-in from teams. Like you have to wear a lot of different hats. I'll just put it that way. And I think a lot of times, sometimes I'm better off being isolated and looking at my laptop and being like, hey, here's an idea, rather than having to do those types of things. That's point number one. Point number two is that I think it's very easy sometimes, and I've probably fall victim to this too, that you can get on and you can look at numbers that are publicly available and be like, well, this team has the best, this group has the best net rating. What is this guy doing? Why isn't he playing those guys? And it's like, sometimes it isn't always about winning those minutes in that specific moment for why a current lineup is playing. Sometimes it might be because you're anticipating long down the road that, hey, there might be some pain with this group now, but we might need them later, or we might need to develop this, or by playing this star player with these other four players, he's going to get to do X, Y, or Z. It's not just about winning the minutes in those moments. And also because we've talked about being predictive versus being descriptive.
Yes.
You're talking about being a bird's eye view and seeing the game. I'm hoping that I'm going to recognize the things that Rick Carlisle and this coaching staff does so that I can show you, or I can recognize something that a player does, like Andrew Nembhard pulling the chair. And hopefully I can be an addition to your experience of watching the Indiana Pacers. I hope that that's true. But I'm not necessarily predicting what's going to happen in the next game, what's going to happen next season, including from a front office perspective, to know what the next move they need to make in conjunction to what the other team is doing. And I'm also not seeing these guys at practice every day. Sometimes when you're questioning, why isn't that younger player getting to play, or why is this guy getting to play? It's because they're seeing them behind the scenes and have a better understanding of what they know and are ready to do than what we are seeing. There's a lot of ways to develop in the NBA that aren't just about NBA minutes. That happens at practice. That happens in film sessions. That can happen in the G League. That can happen in the summer. That can happen a lot of different places. So that's sometimes where I'm probably even somewhat a little bit more hesitant to criticize some of that stuff. And honestly, some of it might come from my upbringing as well. I know what it feels like to sit in a gym. There's not a lot of jobs that you're going to go to where people are going to yell about how bad your dad is at their job. So it makes it a little bit harder, me coming from that perspective, to be like, hey, let me advocate for this person to lose their job. That makes me feel icky, if I'm going to be completely honest. Now, there are times, the prior coaching staff before this one, when I'm watching it, I will be like, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't think this fits this roster. In fact, I think that he's coaching the roster that he wants, not the team that he has. I will do that. But
you and I have not had much trouble critiquing the coaching of the Nick Nurse coaching tree. I'll say that we both found it.
And there might be very specific reasons for why that is. But
it might be the more human side of things.
It might be. I will say I definitely do not think that I know more about basketball than any single person on the coaching staff for the Indiana Pacers. It isn't close. I just hope that I can be a medium between them and you and helping you to understand things. As far as the other question goes, I've never been offered a coaching position. People know from the story with Steph. No, it's already been publicly known. I've talked to probably 6 NBA teams. 3 of them were like, get to know you conversations, like, hey, we're not hiring anybody, but you seem like an interesting person, or like, we like the way that you think. We have no idea what we do with that type of thinking, but it's interesting. And then a couple of them were more serious conversations. However, life stuff happens, different circumstances occur where sometimes doing what you're doing and being rooted where you are and doing it to the best of your ability was the best path for me and what I'm doing. So hopefully people really would hate losing me as a content creator, because that's what I do. So that's the way that I would answer it.
I'll say I have been offered coaching positions. None of them in the NBA or WNBA, however. I am hoping to get a call from the Bucks if they want to move on from Doc. Hopefully, some people were watching our work together, and they will attribute, with I'm hoping for the sexism here, they will attribute some of your genius to me, and I will get the job.
I truthfully hope that people who have listened to this that have enjoyed our banter, and this isn't a super banter moment, I really do hope that people aren't viewing you as my sidekick, because I certainly don't view you that way. I
I'm
think
okay
that
with being a sidekick. Why would that be bad? I've learned more. The two people I've learned the most basketball from in my life, and I know a lot of people have learned basketball from me, especially in the Raptors market, but the two people I've learned the most from, three people, let's say, Coach Wayne, who coached me in high school and then couldn't coach anymore. So my dad coached where I was kind of the coach, but my dad was the parent, the guardian, whatever. Somebody has to coach the team. Can't be me. But the two people earnestly really is Caitlin, who I learn every time we podcast, every time we talk, I learn something. And Evan Gualberto, who brought me along and taught me so many things when we were bouncing around together, that even just every time Caitlin and Evan turn on the film and start talking about it, I get something. I don't yell out, "Oh, I learned something," but I quietly steal it myself so that I can pass it off as my own intelligence.
quietly stow it away for when it might be of use to you later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is the end of these particular mailbag questions. I will let people know I received a lot more than what we answered here, but I didn't want to make this episode super long because we are going to be getting to Cavs Pacer preview, and a lot of the questions had to do with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I'm anticipating that I'll throw some of those in when we talk about them too, because it was already things that I was thinking about, because I'm very lucky because I always get asked very in-depth, I feel very smart questions in these mailbags that I'm usually on similar tracks to what the people are thinking and want to ask. However, I do have one special surprise if you can afford me a few extra minutes.
Okay.
For the end of the podcast. So, since this is publicly available, you may not all know that once a month, in addition to doing these mailbags, I have a popsicle surprise because I'm a popsicle enthusiast. I've done a popsicle of a month all season long, so I must include that here because, at least fives of people are expecting me to have the popsicle of the month. So, are you ready for what I've picked? This is the popsicle of the month. Obviously, this is not a picture of me. Samson, please explain what you have there, where you got it, what's your review?
So it's a creamsicle, which is the best popsicle. I know you and I disagree on many things.
Creamsicles are not part of the popsicle family, but okay.
I am asserting that they are, and I'm comfortable with that assertion. This was after I went climbing with a leg. I was wearing the hot girl basketball shirt. In my mind, I was thinking that I'd predicted that the Pacers would win Game 5. Who would have thought who would play such a big role in it? The player I chose is a creamsicle. You can fill in the rest, Caitlin.
You did. You picked Tyrese Haliburton when we did our first popsicle popcast, and you said it was because he doesn't have that ice cream yet, but maybe he does. Do you think he has the ice cream now?
Yeah. The drives in this series were the ice cream, because I want ice cream in the popsicle because I like ice cream more than just straight popsicles. I know that's different from you, which is maybe why the creamsicle is perfect for how we talk about Tyrese Haliburton and me always drive the ball. Come on, you appreciating the different tones of his game. And creamsicle.
My question is, where did you get the creamsicle?
From the climbing gym.
Oh, they really sold them there.
Yeah. I was very pleased to see one, and I was like, I have to get this.
This is very surprising. Like, this is my type of climbing gym. What else do they got there? Like regular popsicles or just creamsicles?
There are a couple regular popsicles. They're not the fancy popsicles that you like so much. You are actually, of everybody I've ever known, you're the fanciest popsicle girl. Like, nobody comes close.
I sent Samson a picture of my birthday popsicle, which was in the February mailbag. That was like one of the only things I did in between bouts of being ill. I went to go get that popsicle after I'd had tonsillitis twice and then was good for like a week, and then I got COVID. But that was a new place that opened because Nicey Treat, my most beloved popsicle hang in Indy, is closed during February, unfortunately. So I wanted to go there, but then my sister was like, I looked it up, and this place called La Michoacana is opening in Fort Wayne. We could go. So like we went, and I was brand new, and we didn't get to go to the opening because they gave away 200 popsicles at the opening, and I was like,
Wow.
free stuff. So mine was strawberry kiwi. It was actually a paleta, if I'm being honest, because everything written there was in Spanish. So I was a little out of place because I didn't take any Spanish in high school, so I just kind of had to guess. I was like, that looks pretty good. But it was all very good. I recommend it. If you're in Fort Wayne, go to La Michoacana. I think I'm trying to think what road that was on, but I liked it. There's a drive-through too, which is very convenient for me because now I can just drive right in there. There's lots of videos of me going on popsicle road trips in which you can watch me eat popsicles while I'm driving from 2 years ago. I discontinued those because my sister didn't want to go on any more of them. But
It's an avant-garde popsicle. Having seen the picture, I was like, whoa.
I mean, I think people should subscribe simply to go look at the once a month popsicles. I had one that my nephew made me after the Pistons game where he made a Lego diorama in honor of Miles Turner being made fun of for building Legos, and my sister made a popsicle in the form of a Lego minifigure.
That's great.
Like this is a lot of bonus content that people receive, and I take it very seriously because I haven't given positive reviews to all the popsicles. I didn't give a positive review to last month's popsicle.
Wow.
You can trust me.
I'll tell you this much too. I don't often go look at the comments. I try not to look at comments in my life. But I wanted to see if there was feedback on the banter. Who was right? Who was wrong? This guy. Wrong. Over there. You underestimated the banter. People love the banter.
I did underestimate the banter, and I was surprised because, I mean, I value those comments a lot because we didn't do the banter until the end of the podcast, and I didn't ask for feedback on the banter until the end of the podcast, which means the average listening time was quite high. They hadn't turned us off yet.
If you're already tuning in to the Caitlin and Samson podcast, I think the retention rate will be like you're ready for the Samson and Caitlin podcast. Because as you said, we're not salacious or anything like that. We're here to talk about basketball, and we're going to talk for 16 minutes about how Andrew Nembhard feels players. You know, this is what you're in for.
Probably been framed a little bit better.
No, I phrased it that way very specifically.
I do have one YouTube question to ask you. I don't view myself as a YouTuber. I view my video skills quite low, in fact.
You're a YouTubeist.
Yeah. Part of the issue is I like using witty titles. I like wordplay quite a bit. I don't think this plays well on YouTube in terms of the algorithm. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I was searching around YouTube recently, and can you explain to me the trend of just like capitalizing random words? Like it'll be a title, and then all of a sudden, like the Pacers struggled, all caps.
Yeah.
Like why is this a thing? Like, is there something that you gain from this? I don't fully understand it.
So we and sorry everyone for what I'm about to say, we are descending as a society. Our literacy rates are going down. Our brain attention span is going down. Media literacy is going down. All the things we hold dear are being eroded away. And so big, bold words with like, all the most popular people in the like, whether it's like in Toronto, like the Blue Jays or Raptors sphere, because I don't really pay attention elsewhere, but I just see it like pop up is like just trying to bait people who want to click on like a transaction or a big word. Dominates. You're like, what? It's just, and truthfully, because the audience you want to get is young, you want to use like clickbait, big, that kind of stuff, because you have to get some unemployed people, and the highest rate of unemployed people are children, and children watch a lot of stuff. So just big, bold words. And I don't think I'll be offending anybody here because I assume that this is the listener base of the Caitlin and Samson podcast is probably a lot of it is north of 18. But yeah, that's it. We need things to change in society. David Foster Wallace had Oh my God. I've watched quite a few of his interviews, but he had this great one where he, in this quiet way that he would talk in his bandana, say, I think most of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room with just your thoughts for 30 minutes. And it was like 2001. And he basically diagnosed everything that would go wrong with society in the next 20 years. Anyway, banter.
I feel like that impression was very good. And now I'm kind of afraid of how you would impersonate me. Like, what if you were gonna do a Caitlyn impersonation? What would it be?
I do a Lewis impersonation that he hates. It's so funny. Lewis does have that like kind of David Foster Wallace quality to him.
Would you open it with like a Napoleon metaphor?
Yeah, but Lewis also lilts, which means when Lewis speaks, he's going up at the end. And he's very much, but he says my voice is too high when I do it, and it is, but yeah, Lewis lilts. And if you want to talk like me, you have to take random pauses. And
if I was gonna do a podcast impersonation of you, I would have the microphone and I would occasionally pull it back to make a point for dramatic effect. And I would make sure that I said against a lot.
Against. You have to draw a little bit. Yeah, and you have to be slow.
I might say dadgum a few times just to be like quirky and cool.
It's not for a quirk. It is my salt of the earth, middle America proclivities that makes me say daggum.
You spent a lot of time in middle America? Actually, you haven't. I know that you haven't.
Okay, this is what I want. If the Pacers beat the Cavs, Pacers against the Cavs, you have to do 2 minutes impersonating me. Deal?
I want to know I asked how you were going to impersonate me. I'm very curious. What are the Caitlyn podcasting quirks?
I can't go. I think I would be like, I like this. I don't know if you guys will like this. I'd say like frame it however you want. That would be a linchpin of it, a hallmark of it. I would at my co-host, I would express dismay, but that manifests in a big face and a smile when you're shocked at what I'm saying, or you find it to be perhaps dishonest. Those are two hallmarks I would work. Yeah, there it is. Those are the hallmarks I would go for.
That's funny. I was hoping it wasn't going to be my most common one, which is trying to prevent my headset from falling off my head. That one's pretty frequent.
This is a podcast of two people who hold the mic, but yours is on your head.
Slipping. It's slipping on my hair. Like I have my hair tucked behind my ears, and it's still slipping. That's somebody pointed it out. I apologize. I tried very hard not to have my hands up there today, so hopefully I did better. Hopefully I performed at least better in the second half.
It makes you look like an NFL coach, reading the score sheet.
I think my reasoning for this is I do have a stand-up mic that I was using when I was doing the podcast, but the mic is so it picks up everything. Just like even me just running on the touchpad, it would be picking that up, and the sound is annoying to me. And then I like being hands-free because I can't be you. I need a lot of notes. I need to have stuff in front of me. So
I hold the mic like a grudge.
That's right. Okay, well, that concludes the banter portion of this particular podcast. Hopefully you liked reliving Game 5, or at least the ending of Game 5. Honestly, if I was going to put all caps something, probably the wildest all caps game I've watched. Hopefully that will help the algorithm as well. I'll have to
Haliburton series winner, Giannis asks out. There we go.
Next on First Take.
Samson replaces Doc Rivers. That's technically not clickbait. It was a topic on the show.
Who would you have on your assistant coaching staff? Like when you replace Doc, who you putting on the staff?
Yeah. This is a good question. Who would I have on my assistant coaching staff? Nobody I know, I don't think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hurtful a little bit.
No, because I No, I need you to remain in media so that you can peddle me to the masses as a
I can
genius.
boost you up. Like, that's
Yeah.
my job.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Quietly,
like
I'm a Samson propagandist.
the best thing that can happen to an artist is for hyper intellectual, well respected people to start listening to your work so they can hyper intellectualize it so that it has a separate life. So, yeah.
I think
I
the best
need
thing is for you to
you.
develop this like a herd of stands
Well, that's
who
the
will
new.
defend you no matter what you do.
I
Like,
have a
I need
tweet.
people who, like, even when I have a Brandon Ingram Pascal meme, will like come out hard in my defense.
I have a tweet
You
about
had
this.
people on Raptors Republic, and you didn't even stand up
What do
and
you
be
mean
like,
I had
"No,
people? I have
like,
had no
no,
people.
Kalen actually isn't a moron."
So I have a tweet about this. It's like I tweeted like it used to be that you wanted like cool, intellectual, popular people to like your work so that it could travel by word of mouth. But now you just want like obsessive, unemployed people to fight for you all day. And that's actually the way that fandom has changed because it is very popular if people just are like unemployed and hateful on your behalf that if someone says something against you, it's like 16 people show up and just make your day the worst. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm not going to say anything about this person ever again. It's powerful stuff, Standem. David Foster Wallace warned of this.
Okay, well, we really do need to end it. So why don't you go ahead and give your sign off, and I will, try to make myself look like you as the first part of my impression so that we can get the Pacers off to the right start when we're headed into the preview. So you go ahead.
All right. So, let's go. Very good. So, wait, one sec.
My bangs are going crazy. This isn't going well.
So, the first thing you have to do
is not have bangs is hopeful.
Yeah. The first thing you have to do is go to Basketball She Wrote, the Patreon, subscribe, and then get yourself an M-Easy shirt. And then come back here, like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm. It helps the show. It helps spread us to other people who hopefully will learn and enjoy about basketball. Will grow their appreciation for the game and will eventually develop into rabid stands who defend us online. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.